Ladies and gentlemen, we're doing some sponsored content sponsored by us.
I almost just opened this being like, hey, Liz, Brace here.
Well, you know what? We could switch it up a little bit. Yeah. My name is Liz.
I'm Brace.
Oh, my God. No, I'm not going to say it. We're, of course, joined by producer Young Chomsky. And the podcast is called TrueAnon. And this episode of TrueAnon is sponsored by TrueAnon. We are joined by John Vanderslice. We're doing a little ad for our own series that came out about a year ago. A little Young Chomsky joint called Keep the Dream Alive about Tiny Telephone Studios.
Yeah, it's been a year since that project came up. And, you know, we've had a ton of new subscribers. Thank you very much in the past year. Very cool. We love you. Brace actually, capital L loves you.
No, I don't.
And we just thought it would be nice to check in with John, check in with Young Chomsky, and intro you guys who are new to us and to what we do here to this little mini-series that he did, because it's real special and, well, we want you guys to listen to it. So let's get into it.
She was back from the bay, 100 tabs on the way, now delivered on the table. I leaned down to check the paper, 100 purple suns.
John, is that a perfect A?
It actually is.
That's pure voice right there. We are in the studio, not the actor's studio, not even the singer's studio, but in fact, the musician's studio with John Vanderslice, of course, of the band Vandergraaf Generator. John, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I think you're extremely funny, to be honest.
Don't tell him that. Don't give him that.
I really do.
They can see my head visibly growing. John, of course, John not of Vandergraaf Generator, John of John Vanderslice.
Yeah, I've actually never heard that band.
I haven't heard
and I've never been to
Generator.
never been there.
It's like krautrock, right?
I think it sounds proggy to me.
You know what? I might just be saying that because it sounds German, but it's probably Dutch.
It's probably
Anyways,
Dutch.
John, we've got you back in the in the hole, which is what we call our studio. And we're talking. It's been about a year since "Keep the Dream Alive" has come out. What was that? Tell me about that. I never heard it, so this is gonna be my first time.
Well, it's a 5-episode sub-pod about a crazy person starting a business in San Francisco, of which we all know very, very well.
Oh yeah,
a 7x7 dystopian, beautiful / hellish and complicated place that unfortunately has been touched with tech money a few too many times. And it's a story of a business blossoming and then getting snuffed out. And that business was tiny telephone recording.
Yeah, I mean, this is Young Chomsky here. Hello. I made this thing with John, and to me, it's a love story, really. I mean, it's about music, but that just kind of is almost not 100% incidental, but I think it's a little bit incidental. It's about an insane person named John Vanderslice.
Can we stop calling him insane? He's here with us.
Well, he knows I mean it lovingly. I mean, because you have to be insane to do something like
100%.
this, would you? I think John would agree with that. So it's about a guy who's a little bit crazy, and he has this crazy idea that he will go to any length to see through, and that is to open this studio. But then there's actual love story within it, and it's about falling in and out of love with another person, and it's about loss. And I just think there's a lot of human drama. And I think if you didn't get a chance to listen to it when we put it out last year, I think it's still really relevant today.
Well, like Bree said, I mean, it's been about a year since we did put it out. And in that time, I mean, a lot has happened in that time, right? I mean, what can you tell us about what's been going on with you, John, in the kind of aftermath of putting out this sub-pod, as you called it, which I think is very cute, and we should keep that term.
What was very interesting for me is that it actually gave me tons of closure like thinking about my life in San Francisco, and really a 20-year odyssey of building, an extremely low profit margin business, totally illegal, non-permitted, never paid taxes, barely kind of like visible legally, and yet something that did have a wider impact in music, like the sheer number of records, some of which had a lot of, got a lot of like traction in our own little corner of the music world. And there was something about the process of making, this like kind of like defining the story, I guess, and like looking back at it, that really helped me resolve some feelings of like maybe failing. When you build something and it failed, I mean, we went in there with sledgehammers and knocked down all the walls because our landlord, that was the only way we could really, under the terms of what we did in that space, it was basically like, what you did is just like, as far as a commercial real estate developer is concerned, is worthless. And so now just knock all of it out and like, clean up this like mess that you made. And at the time it felt like failure. And now it felt like, wow, we existed there for 20 years in the Mission, probably, one of the most expensive and fragile parts of San Francisco. And it felt celebratory at the end of it, in a sense that when we were just like taking the U-Haul trucks up the driveway, it felt like a disaster. And now it feels like a gift. I'm very, very happy about the experience now. And it feels like it unwound maybe some like existential problems I had with the whole mess. And I just don't feel that anymore. And thanks to young Chomsky for that.
You're welcome.
How much is that tied up in also your, like, I don't know, we've talked about this, not on the podcast, but just our own kind of like unresolved anxieties about leaving San Francisco?
100%. Like it was such a big deal for me to, I had a lot of ties in Sonoma County. So I was really like anchored in Northern California. Yeah. And I think that coming to LA, still don't feel that it's necessarily permanent. So in a way I was like unmoored from like a home, and I feel like I'm just going to be kind of bouncing around for a little bit. And, San Francisco has definitely further devolved since we left,
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Which is wild and so American. It's just like, how does this place of all places just become, it has the emptiest downtown of any city in America.
Yeah.
And there'll be, books written about what happened to Market Street. I mean, it's insane.
It's, I think about too, how like San Francisco was really one of the last, like that whole like San Francisco sound thing. You remember that?
Yeah.
That was really like one of the last, I guess, rock and roll kind of like scenes that really packaged itself as that, to kind of come out before whatever's going on with the modern musical landscape happened. Right. Like, it was like pre-Spotify, pre all that stuff. And that really just like, I mean, of all those bands, I think only like Ty and the OCs are still around.
Yeah.
But it was really like that was kind of it. That was like the last like moment of that kind of music. Like, when kind of records were back and people were playing music, and it was like, there's the internet, and it was like 2011, 2010, 2012 or whatever. But after that, it just completely, like the entire musical landscape changed, especially bands like that really would, I think, have a hard time making it as big as they did in today with the way essentially music is marketed.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. And they were those were San Francisco bands. Like it read to people as, it was a regional thing. And I don't even know if that would even resonate now.
No, not at all. It's kind of it's globalized now, as you always say. It's crazy because you always do talk about the globalists and how they change the record industry. And it's just like, I finally get what you're saying. John, I'm kidding, of course, but John, it's been about a year since the series came out. What has changed? What's new? What's going on?
Well, I live in Los Angeles. I am now I just make my own records. I almost really don't travel up to the Bay Area. I still own Tiny Telephone Oakland, and that's really how I live, because I'm definitely would have to be probably working more. I mean, I don't really work, so the studio also is really important to me for that. But I just make my own records. I have a record coming out in April 14th. I'm doing 3 tours this year. I've been really just focused on my own music, and that was another wonderful kind of like thing that happened with the studio closing, is that so much of my time and energy was being like drained out by like really just running a business. And like I knew so much about like light bulbs and like paper towels, and like like I had a whole like corner of my tech room that had like screws. So I had like all these metric screws. I mean, I just knew all this like small like kind of like janitorial and like plant stuff, and it was amazing to let all of that stuff go.
John, one of the kind of subplots of the series was about your relationship with live performance, right? So you kind of started very modestly and then rose to some success, traveling the world, playing shows, and then there's kind of a climactic moment that I won't spoil, but I think is a fun story. And then you kind of totally gave up on touring, and then you had another kind of epiphany later, and you came back to it in a different way. And so now you're going back on the road again. And I think it's been a little while since you've done a real tour. So like, what are your feelings about going on tour right now? And how does that compare to how you used to approach it?
It's interesting because I think that, I think there's some really interesting like stuff to mine in what's happening with live performance. I mean, you've basically had companies like Live Nation that have like, they've been trying to like vertically integrate clubs. So they've been buying up super small rooms. So like, you drive down Sunset and you pass the Echo and you think, oh, yeah, it's insane. It's owned by Live Nation. And when
there's
you look at
there's a metal detector out front.
It's crazy. And they search your shoes at El Rey. It's like, there's like been a bummerification that's happened along every single step of like club life. And also with that, every single touring band I know, their margins just fall. Oh, yeah. Every single tour, their margins fall. So they're touring, they're either bleeding a trust fund out, or they are the 0.1% and they just blew the fuck up, and there's no other way around this. And so for me, like I stopped really club touring in 2013, 2014, because it was just simply impossible to me. This is when I was scamming hotels for $45 hotel rooms because I was like an influencer. I had this great scam going forever. It was amazing. But that's over. Gas is way more expensive. Insurance for touring now, like you have to actually have like proper insurance if you tour, because it's such a weird gray area. People get sued. There's like 5 people in a van. No one's wearing seatbelts because 2 of them are sleeping. So I just don't really know how any like Econoline or Chevy Express is like driving across the 80 without losing 20 grand. Like there's just no way. So I had to recast touring as like, I mean, at first my friends would make fun of me. I was like, oh, I'm just going to play living rooms, and it just sounds ridiculous. And then I kind of leaned into it like, I'm every artist gets smaller in time. That's just going to happen. And how are you going to deal with it? Or is this simply vanity? Are you actually like working class person that has to make money? I don't have parents. Not only do I not have parents that have money, I don't have parents. Like I don't have anything. So I have to like find a way to actually go out there and make, middle class money touring. And the only way is like taking your own Subaru out there and playing living rooms. That's it. And taking clubs and Live Nation out.
It's funny. Like Brace and I were just talking this week about how we should do an episode on the like radical changes that have occurred in the music industry over the past like 20 years. I mean, you could take it from, really like at any level of the industry, whether it's like at, streaming, if it's at, record deals, if it's at performing, if it's at any other kind of, at just like I hate saying it, but like the quality and like availability of like actual like new music. Like all of it has completely and totally degraded and become really, really impossible, not just for like anyone like to make a living. I mean, making a living as a working artist, whether that's as a, you know, a musician, a painter, an artist, a dancer, you know, whatever it is like, has been impossible for a very long time. Although it's like increasingly, it's just, even on the margins now, it's impossible, it seems like. And so it's funny, people complain about the art that gets produced. They complain about the films that get produced. They complain about the music that gets produced. It's all just like TikTok algorithm songs or, you know, whatever it is, even for small bands, when that's like literally the only way for any musician to make any money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, whereas like to even just go out and play music for, you know, 500, 600, 700 people, just 200 people is taking a massive loss. How is anyone going to do it? And then how's the music even going to get created in the first place then, right?
It's crazy. And the fuel, it's just an MLM. Like the fuel it is trust funds. Like that's like if you were to walk in like in Brooklyn and just, you know, just like go stand outside like of a rehearsal place and watch bands come in and out, you'd be like, these kids all went to like nice schools. Like, you know what I mean? This is a moneyed class. Well, if you ever did that, I would love to be like the back end person that I would open my books and I would show you what's crazy is I would show you what's happened since like, let's say 2004 to today. Like in 2004, the standard support, you know, act was getting $250 a show. That was like standard. So if Billions or like High Road or, you know, even CAA, if you were like asked by a big booking agency to open up for a huge band on tour, you would get $250 flat. It's the same exact rate as today. That's what you get today. So we're talking like 15, 17 years, 18 years of flat wages. And the expenses of touring. Sorry, there's a cat that just broke in here. Do you want me to get rid of this cat?
No, it's fine. If you can hear, if listeners, if you can hear the little jingle, that's the bell on the cat's neck.
So that it's remarkable. So whoever is standing now in this kind of like field is either monomaniacal beyond belief, or they are just simply, you know, they're losing, you know, $50,000 to $100,000 a year for the pleasure of saying that they do music. You know, it's really it's unreasonable. You know.
Yeah, I what you say about the pay for opening bands is, I remember when friends of mine, you know, would play these like giant shows, you know, with like thousands and thousands and thousands of people for their opening up for these bands, and they'd be like, "Yeah, we got like equivalent of like $50 a person."
Yeah. Before expenses.
I mean, it's insane.
Like
cab fare. It's so crazy. Yeah,
it's
but even
crazy.
you know, I you know, just coming from I guess the music world, knowing people who tour for a living, like even just the margins of like a headlining act, like even a decently big headlining act, has just like plummeted.
Yeah, like the OCs, it's not easy for any band. That's what's crazy, is that even the winners are getting like pinched. And you know, you look at it like how much, like, let's say a Sprinter van costs.
Yeah.
You know, if it's really modified to be a touring vehicle, it might be 70 or 80 grand. This is insane.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. It's insane. We're also, so you're going on tour. Where can people find out about the tour?
I only really post on Instagram.
Which, by the way, never stop posting on Instagram.
John's Instagram is legendary.
Great Instagram stories. Great finder of memes.
I am
reposter of memes.
I'm a motivated shitposter. I've been really obsessed with TikTok now, and I just feel like I'm just kind of like dumping good TikTok stuff. But yeah, thank you for that. I really enjoy it, and I've kind of embraced the idiocy of like being on Instagram.
So they can find it there. John Vanderslice is the Instagram.
Yeah.
What's the new album called?
It's called Crystals 3.0. And that is my favorite acid vendor on the dark web, called Instrument. And he had devised this like genius method of making like ultra pure acid that he called, well, his first version was Crystals 2.0. And then after a couple of years,
he graduated to
Crystals 3.0. And the first time I saw that on a drug listing, I was like, that's the name of my new record.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. You can catch Keep the Dream Alive actually on the TrueAnon feed. And you can catch John's new album. When does it come out?
April 14th, Ruination Day.
Ruination Day?
Yeah, it's when the Titanic sank, Lincoln got shot. Like, there's like 100 horrible things that happen on this day.
Good God. And TrueAnon, if you want to see us, we are at April 15th at the Far Out Lounge in Texas. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely my pleasure. I love all of you.
Love, small word, alcohol, big word, art, too small.
Well, we've got the link to the series in the description, link in bio, Classico style. And it's 5 parts, and we think you should really check it out. So here's a little taste of it, and we'll see you next time.
I was at a friend's house when I was in 7th grade, and my friend played me a Kinks record. I remember flipping the back of the record over and seeing Ray Davies from the Kinks leaning over a Neve console. That's when I first started thinking that recording studios were potentially very, very important to artists. And that was the beginning for me. I started playing in my first band when I was 24. I'd never been in a band before. So I was working in restaurants, and I eventually decided that I needed to get a warehouse with my friends and make it like a rehearsal place. I basically said that art is sacred and art needs patrons, and she said, I've decided to rent you the space. Well, that was like, if you give me like an open door, I'm in. I'm fucking there. And so we slowly started building the infrastructure of a recording studio. I remember thinking, I can do this. This can actually be a business. I was asked by Noise Pop, which is like a local San Francisco festival. So I said yes, and the Mountain Goats were the third band. I had a promo copy of Mass Suicide Occult Figurines. There was a song on it called Bill Gates Must Die, which, by the way, he actually must die. After the show, Darnielle came up to me from Mountain Goats, and he was like, hey, that was really good.
He said, hi, this is John Vanderslice in San Francisco. I said, okay, look, that is not your real name. But that was the beginning. But yeah, so we went out on a pretty punishing tour, and those punishing tours are places where people bond.